Okay. Shall I hand over to Kate? And the Dorset Carer Steering Group is this session. It's a Have Your Say session, and I'd like to welcome Kate, who's the chair of the steering group and also a carer herself. And Chris Skinner is going to be sharing the screens today, unless Emma's poised ready. Emma, are you ready to do that?
I can do if you like.
Okay, and Emma Senior is here with us from BCP, so I won't do introductions because it's not that type of session, and I'll hand over to Kate. Thanks, everybody.
So yeah, can we have the slides, please?
They're on their way.
Good. My screen up. Okay, so welcome to this session hosted by the Dorset Carer Steering Group, which is designed to give an opportunity for carers to have their say on how services should be shaped for the future. Although I'm not totally sure how many carers we've got in this session, but hey ho. Right, next slide, please. So I'm Kate Meacham. I'm an unpaid carer and volunteer chair of the Dorset Carer Steering Group. The group has members from the health and social care partner organisations and also has 6 carer representatives who aim to represent the voice of carers in Dorset, including Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole. The steering group's responsible for producing the long-term strategy for supporting carers in Dorset. And the current document, which you can see the front page of there on the slide, Valuing Carers in Dorset, was produced in 2015 and is currently being refreshed, providing hopefully carers with an opportunity to have their say. In terms of the definition of a carer, basically you'd be defined as a carer in this context if you're looking after someone who cannot manage without your help due to frailty, disability, serious health condition, mental ill health or substance misuse. You might be a parent, a partner, husband, wife, family member, neighbour or friend. But we do know that people don't always recognise themselves as being an unpaid carer, or indeed even realise that there's a wide range of support available for them in Dorset. So in the session today, we aim to introduce you to the objectives in the strategy. There are 9 main objectives in the strategy. We're going to tell you what we've heard and give you the opportunity to have your say and contribute to the future long-term strategy for carers in Dorset. Next slide, please, Emma. So this slide basically shows page 10 in the current Valuing in Carers in Dorset strategic document. I'll let you have a look at it. I'm not going to read it out word for word. So we work with carers and organisations in Dorset to create this strategic vision and objectives by drawing on national guidance for carer support, whilst also making it relevant for local needs. We agreed a set of overarching objectives that you can see here, and these were used to create an action plan and outcomes that could be used to monitor delivery of improved services for carers in Dorset. So we've taken these objectives and grouped them to relate to you as the carer in yellow, and to you, the carer, together with the person you care for in blue. So for you as the carer in yellow, it's about how you are recognised and identified as a carer, how you are offered support and advice to remain safe and healthy, and how the health and social care workforce is developed to do this. For you and the person you care for, so those are the objectives in blue or a greeny blue, it's about how you are involved in the planning of their care and about how your rights as a carer are recognised during this process and how you are supported in this role. We also have objectives in the strategy regarding carers who are in education and employment, and also how we involve carers in the commissioning of services for supporting carers. That's the green and the grey. But today we'll mainly be looking at the yellow and the blue themed objectives. So next slide, please. So what we have heard, health and social care organisations are working hard with groups in the community and the voluntary sector to improve services for carers, and we're listening to what you are telling us. And rather than ask all the same questions again, we've been compiling results of surveys and other engagement with members of the public and providers to summarise what we've heard at a local and national level. And these are just some examples of what we've heard about needing a break, about depression, poor mental health, isolation, cost of care, information's confusing, the COVID pandemic continues to add pressure. Big one, shortage of paid care workforce is difficult to access. Another big one, some carers are still not digitally connected. Delays in accessing help and support with long waiting lists, NHS pressures, and the Home First process doesn't always work. So we've heard lots of things. So I'm going to hand you over to Chris now to look at some of these objectives together. But for any of you here today representing health and social care organisations, which I think is the main audience today, so as well as carers, but if you're from a health and social care organisation, can I ask that when we do this, can you provide feedback by putting yourselves in the shoes of the carer? Thank you. So over to Chris now.
Thank you, Kate. Hello, everybody. So I'm Chris and I work for Dorset CCG. So that's the Clinical Commissioning Group. So it's the NHS organisation in Dorset. So I'm an engagement officer and I'm just helping out, supporting today. I attend the carers steering group, and we're looking at this piece of work. As Kate has rightly said, it's all about trying to identify what's important to carers and making sure that the work that we do in the future reflects that and tries to make life easier and better for carers and the people they look after. So the first grouping that Kate outlined, so the yellow priorities, the top four there, it's all about you as a carer. So we really want to try and have a discussion, if possible, to understand, what your experience is, what challenges you face, and maybe what you see as priorities in terms of what you'd like to see, change in the future, or priorities that might make your life a little bit easier as a carer. I'm aware there's maybe not so many carers in the room, but again, professionals, feel free to contribute to the conversation, because I don't want Kate to feel like she's the only one that's required to talk here. Obviously, Kate, if you're happy to talk, then we'd really love to hear your thoughts on this. There is the chat bar available as well, so if anyone would like to use the chat bar, if they don't feel confident in speaking up, the chat bar can be used to record all the information we need, and we can get that at a later date as well. Plus, we are recording, so if we do have a conversation, we'll make sure that we gather that conversation through the recording. And I think Emma is also taking notes, so between those three different elements, we should be able to capture any thoughts and opinions, because it's really important for us to make sure we understand carers' needs and that we're not missing anything. So that's really what we're trying to do today. So the first one's then, so supporting the early identification of carers, including self-identification. So it's really important. Obviously, used to be 1 in 10 people of the population are a carer in some way, shape or form. So that's a huge number of people. We don't know that number of people. Obviously, not everyone needs carer support, but there's still a large number of carers that we're not aware of and are not accessing carer support. So any experience of that would be interesting. Has anyone got any experience of early identification of carers? Is it easy for carers? Is there help for carers to realise that there's support out there? Is it easy for carers to ask for support? Anyone got any sort of views on that at the moment?
I know within sort of, obviously I'm a carer myself, but also with the people that I work with that are carers, I think that identification is the biggest difficulty, because again, people don't want to see themselves as carers. I know a colleague of mine's dad was in hospital recently and she didn't want to identify as a carer because some of the fears were that there'd be more pressure put on her. I've talked to other people that will say, well, no, I don't want to be seen as a carer. I'm the husband, I'm the wife. So I think it's still quite a massive barrier. I've got a great nephew and I've got a step granddaughter that I help support, and their parents, I'm constantly chasing them, to make sure that they access the services. And I'm thinking, if I wasn't there, would they really be accessing the support that's out there? So again, I think it's it's a big piece of work when it comes to getting carers to identify themselves. I'm going to shut up now because Joy's got her hand up.
No, thank you. It's really important points raised, and I'm sure that's, you know, probably a view that many carers do have. Joy.
Yeah, I think it's the same, that it's the word carer that's very difficult. I think in a way supporter, because certainly in certain things, unless you're actually doing a lot of physical and personal care, you're actually supporting someone through their disability, illness, or whatever it is, and supporter sits better, I think, than the word carer.
Right.
I do know there are people. I run a carer support line, and when they phone up, they don't always know where to go. So I think also it needs to be more noticeable. The main Dorset carer support needs to be sort of available and seen wherever people can, so that they know there's actually somewhere they can support, and that goes for people who are supporting them too, CMHTs and places like that, that they have this information. I mean, Pat and I do try and get it around, but I had an email from somebody working in a CMHT in Blandford saying they had a carer, or no, they said they had a lady who's not actually a carer, but she looks after someone, but she doesn't fit the carer benefits and things like that. And obviously they are still a carer or a supporter, whatever word you want to use, because this person was doing a lot for them, but they said they couldn't give her assessments and things. So I put them in touch with Dorset Carer Support and Rethink. But it just makes you think that the information needs to get out there more.
Yeah, Joy, absolutely. I mean, that obviously within the second bullet point there, ensuring carers receive relevant and timely information and advice. You know, being a carer and the support available isn't all about, well, does this carer qualify for benefits or not? You know, the support is so much more wider than that. Even if it's just being able to tell someone, actually there's some other carers just down your road that you can go and talk to and have a natter with. You know, it's not about, oh, are you a carer that requires benefits? Do you qualify? No, sorry, you know, on your bike. It's so much broader than that. So yeah, Kate.
Yeah, just a comment on looking at these particular objects in my own personal experience as a carer. So I've been going in and out of hospitals for the last 10 years as a carer, not for myself at all. And I've never once been asked about being a carer or offered any information on how to register. I found out about all that through my job at the time as a practice manager. And even now, I still don't ever get asked about it. Now, whether that's because people potentially know me and assume I know it all anyway, but when I deal with the workforce who don't know me, it just doesn't necessarily come up, and you don't generally get the eye contact that the person being cared for gets. So I think there's that one, and the other thing is working with Weymouth Carers Group and a lot of obviously carers. Whenever we introduce information, it's just people say, well, I just didn't know about that. I don't know about that. So it's sort of not knowing about it all.
It's really difficult, isn't it? Because it's like the information's out there. We do our utmost. I mean, for me, example, I send out a carers newsletter every month to the mental health teams and the inpatients and everyone else with all the carer information on to share with all their staff. And it's just, what is it that, why are people still, you know, like what you've come up against, Joy, recently? Why has that happened when, you know, they've had awareness training? And is it about changes of staff? Is it as us as organisations need to somehow look at, if there is changes within staff teams, we need to make sure that we're on top of that? I don't know. It's so many people. And I know when I ran a carer support, you know, we were running for 6 years and loads of people knew us, but we would still come up and go, oh, I didn't know you were there. And it was like,
I think the message is that it's still a challenge. So we need to do something potentially but potentially a bit different, I think.
Yeah.
But certainly, again, generally talking to carers, it's just about getting them into a position where they can have a conversation with someone. And I've heard that word mentioned many times today. It's about having, it's nothing complicated. It's not a complicated carers assessment. I went to that session as well. Yeah. It's just a conversation about the carer on their own, independent, just to sort of, you know, say, are you okay? I mean, we get a lot of really good support from Weldmar now, and I get fabulous support from their carer support service. So once you're in it, it's brilliant. It's just getting in it.
It's getting in.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, you know, interesting points there around workforce. You know, the workforce aren't able to tell people where to go and give them that basic first through the door advice, and how the hell the carers necessarily able to find that information off their own backs. And secondly, you know, there's a point there that actually there is some really good information, advice, support out there, but it's the communication of that maybe is the problem. So yeah,
In fact, just one more thing, Chris, I have to say,
yeah.
The feedback that we've had about Carer Support Dorset has been exemplary in everything I've heard, and other people might hear different, but so that arriving has just been a lifesaver for a lot of people.
Yeah, before I go to Amanda and then Joy, Michelle, have you heard of Carer Support Dorset at all, or Chris?
No, I hadn't actually. No.
Really? Okay,
No,
that's interesting.
So,
do you live in sort of the Bournemouth, Christchurch, Poole area, or the other Dorset area?
I'm in Dorset. I'm in Weymouth.
Okay, so
I'm not actually a carer, though, I've got to say. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a carer, but I still hadn't heard of it. So I work with carers. So.
Oh, brilliant. Well, that's useful for you to know then. So Carer Support Dorset was established a few years ago now. It's fairly recent. So Dorset Council set up this service, so it's independent from the council. So carers don't necessarily feel like they have to ring social services to get that help or support. It's an actually independent organisation that purely focuses on carers and support and stuff. So just for your information, really. If you're
good to know.
Google search, you'll be able to find Carer Support Dorset and all they can offer.
Oh, thank you.
Amanda?
I was just going to agree with what you're saying. Even this morning, somebody who attended, a carer that attended the Dorset Museum, unfortunately they booked late, so they weren't able to go to the presentations, but they went early to try and look at some of the information stands, and I'm not sure that everything was set up. So she went home again and she emailed me saying, I haven't found what I need, and, you know, sort of, I just know that she doesn't have that support. She wants to know information, and of course I've been able to guide her through email, but it's just happening. I hear it a lot that people don't know what is out there, hence why this event was so important, really, to say what is in Dorset, because there is a vast amount out there, but people still don't know about it, and I really don't know how to get that message across. It's not easy. So yeah, I've got prime examples this morning. There we go.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, brilliant. This is all evidence to suggest that these priorities are spot on. Joy?
Yeah, I was going to say there is a lot of assumption, like Kate was saying, and that's also with people who've been caring for someone for several years. Perhaps they've had a lull and people have been in a certain amount of recovery, and then the crisis has come again. And that when they go back into the system, they're automatically, people think, oh, well, they've been doing it for years, they know, but things change and they actually need to know they change. And I'd want to say about Dorset's support, carer support. I've recently had to contact them because I've had to re-register as a carer for my husband who's become seriously ill. And what I would say with that is that they've been really helpful. And I'm glad I do the work I do as carer support to be able to know that I could contact them. No, I did actually need someone else, even though I support carers, to point out to me that I was actually in a caring role again, because I'd forgotten. But I've now got a carer support worker from the council, from Sherborne, who came to see me earlier this week, last week, and she was absolutely brilliant. And,
fantastic.
So it's out there, but it's actually finding it and understanding what you can find and what is out there. And also, I suppose, in a way, you've got to be proactive as well with it.
Yeah, there's a bit of that.
The lady who perhaps didn't find anything, if she phones our helpline, we signpost people. We don't just give peer support, but we signpost people to what they're looking for. And if we haven't got that, we'll search for it and then contact them and give it to them.
Thank you, Joy. I've sent a response and invited her to contact me again for more information, and I'll try and open that support lines for her. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, Joy, just for everyone in the meeting, when you say give us a ring on our hotline, who are you?
We're the Carers Project. We've come under the umbrella of the Dorset Mental Health Forum and part of the WARP, the Wellbeing and Recovery Partnership. We work with NHS and the Forum. Yeah. And we offer support. We were just mental health carers, but since the pandemic, we've started, excuse me.
No problem. Started branching out, I think is what she was going to say.
Yeah. Joy, can you put yourself on mute, please?
I'll bring you in a minute.
Chris, I think we need to get on to the next slide because time's going on now.
Yeah, okay, I'm on a meeting.
Sorry, Joy, we're going to move on to the next slide, but I think we understood you've started to branch out further than just mental health.
Yeah. We branched out in the pandemic to all carers.
Thank you, Joy. So what time is it? 2:35. Okay. So about you. So these three blue priorities. Again, these are more about you as a carer and the person you care for. So again, we're just checking to see whether these are relatable, whether these are right, whether they are priorities. Whether you have any experience or challenges associated with these. So you can see there, involving carers in local and individual care planning. So again, Kate, I think you touched on that already a little bit around the care planning. Provide personalised support for carers and those receiving care. So it's very much about involving the carers in those decision-making processes, making sure that the carers can actually be involved in that personalised approach. And then ensuring that carers' rights are recognised at the same level as the cared for person. So has anyone got any experience, any challenges associated with those? Do those ring true to people? So you can see there, we've got here sort of triangle of care approach. I don't know if anyone's aware of that, because I'm sure Pat could just sort of touch on that very briefly to explain.
Yeah, what I will say is with our carers helpline, before we started doing the triangle of care, I had a lot of carers phoning up regularly, and they were quite angry and frustrated because they felt they weren't listened to and that people weren't including them in anything. And when we started to do the triangle of care, certainly with the inpatients, and going round to all the wards and talking about carer awareness, things changed, and people at phone now have more complex problems rather than just the frustration of not being heard. There are odd people that happens to where they've not been noticed, but the calls have changed, and I think it is working.
Okay. So,
and I've got a workshop on it fairly soon.
Ah, brilliant. Well, that's good to know, though, that there is some change there. There is some positive feedback around that. That's good. Anyone else got any thoughts? So it's here around, some of the things we believe we've achieved. So there's sort of Carers Matters magazine. Don't know whether anyone is aware of that. Access to breaks and respite, whether that's, something that people are making use of, or whether you're hearing actually it's still a massive problem and it's hard to do. I don't know.
I think what has changed, Chris, for me, is
just Kate's hands up.
Oh, sorry, Kate.
Kate.
Yeah, obviously, contributing as a carer. I mean, the trouble is, you see, my experience is not brilliant. in quite a bit of this, in terms of, in the planning, both for my parents and for my husband, who I am an on-off carer for now. It is just not, that care plan for the person being cared for, it affects me too. It whether it's something I'll need to do that I wasn't doing before, whether it's, I've had to change my life completely during COVID, whereas if my husband had been well, I wouldn't have had to. And I am completely fit and well, and it's had its toll. So yeah, I think we need to definitely talk to more carers and find out what their experience is. There will be good experience because there's all this good stuff going on that we can see on the slide.
Yeah.
But we just need to work out how to get it further afield, I think. That was all really.
Yeah, you make a good point there about speaking to other carers. Obviously, this isn't a one-off session. We're not just going to pat ourselves on the back at the end of this session and say we've done it. This is just an opportunity, and we're going to be doing lots of engagement with carers to check that these priorities ring true. Crikey, I've got 4 hands. I think Pat was first. You're on mute. Pat, you're on mute.
Reaching out to those people, like Kate said, that haven't had such a good experience to look at what could have been different. I think that's hugely important. But what I will say on a positive note, I've been around for 4 years, and when I first joined, I was horrified thinking, how am I going to get our teams to refer carers to services, because it was so disjointed, where now it's absolutely brilliant because you've got Carer Support Dorset, you've got CRISP and Rethink. So you've got 3 real key peer players. If they go to those, they can signpost on, and that has made a massive difference, I think, across Dorset.
Yeah, thank you, Pat. Amanda, I think you were next.
I was just going to touch on Caring Matters to say that we have put a survey in the last edition of Caring Matters trying to get feedback from carers, but we only received 26 responses, and considering there's 16,000 copies that are issued across Dorset, that's not really enough to make a decision. So we're going to put another article, a larger article, into the next edition, which comes out in December, in the hope to get a more sort of stronger response from people about what they want from Caring Matters. Does it meet their needs? Is it, is it working for them? What would they like it to be in the future?
Okay. Yeah, it might be that you need to maybe do some work to follow up with people to make sure they've received Caring Matters, and that, what are their thoughts. It might need a different approach to get some more responses, but yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
Who was next? Joy? Let's go with Joy.
I just wanted to say, from the carer's point of view, actually even filling in surveys can sometimes feel overwhelming. I, at the moment, am overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed with waiting for things that we're told are going to happen, and they're not happening. This, from July, we were told that my husband needs oxygen, and he's been tested for it and everything. We're still waiting for the oxygen. He needs an operation on his eyes, and that's been on, and he's practically blind now. And so we're waiting for. I'm waiting for the rehab people to come and see how we've got to change our house to make it safe for him, and the fact that he's going to have to eventually sleep downstairs. And all of that adds to your stress and your mental health. And the frustration my husband has, which comes out as anger, because he gets angry and anxious because he can't see, he can't do things, and he hates not being able to do it and me having to do it. And that also adds to it. So that there are so many things that carers have to deal with, which when you look at a person, you think, oh, they're okay, they're managing, but actually inside you're not. You just smile and look as if you are. So it's not an easy job.
No, absolutely not. Tim.
Actually, just picking up on Joy's last point, because I think it's really valid point about. I think sometimes there is a danger that we perceive caring just in terms of the physical toll of of providing care, and it's sometimes we overlook. It's not just, like you say, the emotional toll on you as a carer, but also the fact that you're dealing with the emotions of the person that you're caring for, because they're feeling perhaps that they don't want to really be dependent on somebody else. They would much rather be able to do something for themselves, and actually that in itself is quite challenging, isn't it? So and it's all these little sort of nuances that I think it's very easy for us as professionals sometimes to overlook if we're not careful. The point I actually wanted to make was really picking up on the thing about single or joint carers assessments, because I can think back prior to the Care Act, when as a professional the rule kind of was if if I was going out to undertake an assessment with somebody who has had care needs and they had a carer, there could very well be tensions between the cared for and the carer, but ostensibly we were there to support the person with care needs, accepting that we had, we also needed to try and cater for the needs of the carer as well. Obviously, since the Care Act and the fact that has put carers on a more even footing in sort of legislative terms, I'm curious now as to what carers' experiences are of having an assessment, whether they have that, whether they would prefer to have that their carers' assessment undertaken by somebody different to the person who's allocated to the person they're looking after, or whether they're happy to have the same professional actually undertaking an assessment of them and the person they're caring for.
Yeah.
Not sure whether we'd be able to get that one answered today, but I think it's a difficult, because it could potentially put some professionals feeling maybe they're not able to do one or the other wholly satisfactorily, sort of thing.
Absolutely. Thank you. Last comment, Joy, and then we're going to just give Emma a couple of minutes to wrap things up for us.
Okay. I was just going to say quickly, if you have the separate assessment for the carers, which is fine, as long as the carer is as open about what's happening on the side of the person they're supporting as well as themselves. You've got to be open as a family. I mean, I am very open with my husband, and I'm open with what I say because he knows I'm aware, and he knows I will mention it, but it just depends on the person.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you, Joy. Okay, all of that conversation really is reinforcing that the priorities are still very relevant and priorities for us in terms of our professional view and the carers that we hear from, and certainly from the carers in the room as well. So I think that reconfirms that, and Emma's just going to talk now about an overview of those, and actually, are we missing anything?
Yeah, so it's time to reflect really on what we've just been talking about, and is there anything missing from those 9 priorities? So where we're looking at the identification of carers, being involved in care planning, supporting carers themselves to remain safe and healthy, is there anything that you think we've not included? Anything that you actually think should be in our priorities?
I think one of the things that I've always thought is that there is no instruction manual when you start off when you discover you're a carer. I know there are a lot of courses, but at the very beginning, it would be just nice to have something that you could look through, and if you're caring for somebody who has psychosis, to know how to react when they are saying things that away in their mind. I mean, I learnt when I was caring for my son and he had bouts of psychosis, but it took time, and the whole time somebody becomes unwell and you become the person to support them, you want to do exactly the same as the professionals. You want that person to become as well as they can be in spite of whatever ails them, and that means we need to learn how to do it. And at the beginning, reading something before you're at the stage where you can go on to perhaps a recovery centre or the courses that are led by Rethink and things. You need just something to read through first, I think, to help you.
Thank you, Joy. Kate?
Yeah, just listening to Joy actually, and just looking at these objectives again, and I know them all, obviously. For me, it's about having been through all of this and got information perhaps way too late, had a dad with Alzheimer's and no power of attorney, I think it's doing more work on that objective on timely information and putting something in there. It's got to be early. It's almost got to be before you even become a carer, so that because it will come to us all, and make sure that we get in early, people are well prepared for it. And like Joy says, you get given something which is a little bit of an instruction manual on what to be ready for and what to get in place.
Thanks, Kate. And with my own experience, so my grandma had a mini stroke, so almost overnight my mum became her carer, and she didn't have any information. And it's like you say, you almost need to know that prior to becoming a carer. Once you become a carer, it's almost too late, isn't it? Amanda.
Yep, I was going to comment again on something that was said earlier, just about housing. I don't think that quite fits in the objectives we've got at the moment, but if you haven't got the right housing, and as your life changes, or the caring role is impacted, or the cared for person's life deteriorates, we know sometimes people may have to move downstairs, for example, if they live in a house with stairs, or they might need some adaptations. They might need to move into a wheelchair, start using different equipment around the house. Jane Philippa Russell even spoke earlier about sensors in the house and having technology to help in the home. And I don't think the outcomes have sort of touched on these points. I wondered if we could add those, or add it to the conversation.
Thanks, Amanda. I think that's a really good point, especially with the time it takes sometimes to get these things in place. Talking about my own experience again, it took 6 months to get a wet room and stair lift fitted for my grandma, by which time it was too late and she couldn't use it. So, and this isn't in this area, this is up in Leeds, but it just shows that, coming back to that word timely again, isn't it? Tim.
I just wanted to echo firstly what Kate had said about information and being available in a timely way. It's almost like it's almost like a public health message, that actually you want that information for the general public, so that it's not just at the point when you're becoming or have become a carer. It's actually way before that. So the only way I can sort of liken it to is like the public information things that you used to get on the telly, those. But it needs repeating, time and again. So I don't know whether that falls under the remit of public health. It feels to me like it could do, because it's about promoting well-being and just thinking ahead of potentially when that sort of thing might occur in your life when you find yourself in that kind of situation. The other thing was for me, and I'm not sure, I don't think it's captured in these 9 priorities. There's something for me about how public bodies like local authorities and the NHS and everything are held to account, so that when they are developing strategies or initiatives of one sort or another, that they consider the perspective of a carer in that. So an example would be town centre development, for instance. The council might be thinking, okay, we're going to redesign our shopping centre. Actually, how often do they think to consider the need for public changing spaces, that kind of thing? And it could be, there's just all sorts of things that councils do. Like it could be housing development, could be seafront development, all sorts of things. But actually, there is a specific consideration given of how that would be seen through the eyes of a carer. But I don't know how you fit that in, whether that becomes a 10th priority somehow.
You could potentially put, because I think actually these objectives we need to involve carers in local and individual care planning, because they're 2 very different things. One is about individual care planning with the person you care for. The other one is about local planning, like you've just talked about. So potentially need to split that out.
Because otherwise I think it does seem to be looked at purely in the context of care planning rather than other types of planning.
But I know time's going, but what I would just like to say though about, I was involved in the splitting of these objectives into yellow and blue, but for me it really is about getting these objectives to relate to the carer themselves and not the person they're caring for. Because when I talk to carers, they always talk about the person they're looking after, not themselves. Whereas we should really be addressing them and the support that they need, as well as the support they need to look after the person they care for.
Jeanette, did you have your hand up?
I did. I think the points have just been covered by Kate and Tim. I was just thinking from a young carer's perspective as well of the support that they need, and actually they're quite hidden, some of the young carers at the moment. And when you're talking about sort of big strategic changes, it would be really helpful if Ofsted held schools to account for young carers, because that's a huge bit. How we do that, I don't know, but it is going back to that, holding to account local authorities, schools of how we are. And I know there's lots of good work in schools with young carers, but it is also linking with GPs, and I know I'm going round to a lot of the GPs at the moment to talk about young carers. It's that identification that's quite crucial, and again it's that website part for young carers to be able to access, and we haven't put here sort of like a digital offer, because I think that's crucial. My own experience at the moment with my mother-in-law going through it, and we're becoming her carer. The thing is, we don't, you know, even with the job that I do, it's how do we access those services, and maybe a digital offer would be where everything's put together would be useful.
Yeah, good points. Yeah, good.
Amanda.
Okay, yes, I just need to let you know that we're overrunning because obviously we started late. You've probably got 5 minutes before another session starts, so by all means we'll finish in the next 5 minutes. You don't have to rush to finish, but if I disappear, that's why. I just thought with the 9 outcomes, the sort of end of the caring role, I don't think maybe we've done so much on that, and if the caring role ends, you know, what happens to the carer, how much support is there afterwards, how long does that go on for? Do they feel confident that somebody's going to just check in with them now and again to make sure how they're getting on? Because, you know, that's just as important as we were talking about earlier.
Could I just add with some of our young carers as well? It's trying to get with some of the caring needs, the bereavement support. We're finding it quite tricky to tap into bereavement support straight away. There's lots of services, but they say you have to wait 6 months. And the problem we have with some of our teenagers is by the time you've done the 6 months, they tend to have shut down a little bit on it. So it's just that kind of support and how that looks, immediate support for them.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we're back to Kate now, the last couple of slides. You might be on mute, Kate.
Hang on. Yeah, so this was just to show how you can get involved, but obviously we haven't got many carers on this call, so it's just thanks to Chris and Emma and Amanda, lots of great feedback. These are the ways you can get involved, but basically we need to be persuading everybody to register with the carer support services, because that's the best way of finding out what's going on. Also the reference groups are a really good way, or if you're really brave and you know anybody that might want to join the steering group, then just to contact Harriet. And then the last slide, I think Emma just shows you the contact details, but I'm guessing most of you know this anyway. And so the next slide is, thank you. So many thanks for everybody for your time, and I hope you enjoyed the session. And I personally would like to think that we'll be running this very same session with lots more carers in the future. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, everyone.